This video is not going to be a Bible study, but rather a bit of a history lesson concerning a Bible translation. I want to talk about a translation of the Bible that is not well known of, but sometimes gets brought up when someone looks into the Anglo-Israel message. This Bible is the Ferrar Fenton translation, translated by Ferrar Fenton, who lived from 1832 to 1920. The reason I bring this Bible up is often it is called the Anglo-Israel Bible or something of that sort, because Ferrar Fenton was a believer in the Anglo-Israel message that the Anglo-Saxon, Germanic, Scandinavian, and Celtic and Kindred people are the physical Israel people of the Bible. If you do not know what I am talking about, I would recommend my recent video on this subject titled Anglo-Israel Truth in a Nutshell. Ferrar Fenton was a London businessman that was born in 1832 and began working on his translation of the Bible in 1853. He published his translation of Paul's epistles in 1883 and other parts of the Bible in years to follow. The complete Bible was first published in 1903, with revisions published after that up till 1910. He was a descendant of Roger Fenton, who worked on the Authorized King James Bible in 1611. Fenton spent approximately 50 years working on the Ferrar Fenton translation with the goal of, in his words, quote, to study the Bible absolutely in its original languages, to assert what its writers actually said and thought, end quote. Fenton had acquired an education and understanding of ancient Greek, Hebrew, and Latin through being a distinguished member of the Royal Asiatic Society. He also had access to numerous ancient Septuagint manuscripts and Masoretic manuscripts to aid in his translation. Ferrar Fenton, being a believer in the Anglo-Israel truth, did dedicate his Bible translation to, quote, all those nations who have sprung from the race of the British Isles, end quote. Ferrar Fenton even engaged in at least one debate on the Anglo-Israel message in 1888. Many make it sound like Ferrar Fenton, since he was a believer in the Anglo-Israel message, set off to make a Bible to conform to his beliefs and in this truth. This is not true at all. For one, you don't need to rewrite the Bible to confirm this truth. The truth is there in the Bible, whether you want to use a King James or a New American Standard. But some make it sound like he was adding and taking out verses like Joseph Smith did of the Mormon Church with his translation. This is just not the case. In 1911, he was recorded of saying he was approached by several cults and sects wanting him to write them a Bible to push their beliefs. He refused and commented on how much money he could have made if he had chose to do so. What we have here is a man that spent 50 years of his life to translate the Scriptures and study them. And if he had wanted to, he could have rewrote the Scriptures however he wanted, but there's no evidence of that whatsoever. Now, the translation is a bit different in that he rearranged the books of the Bible in what he thought was the correct chronological order. In the Bible, the Tetragrammaton, or the name of God, was translated throughout the Old Testament as the ever-living God. But sometimes it was translated as Lord and Jehovah too. His translation of the New Testament is based on the Greek text of Westcott and Hort and was approved by many professors and theologians of his day. Ferrar Fenton is probably best known for his theory that the whale in the story of Jonah was not a great fish, but rather a ship, a great ship, called the Great Fish. This is brought up probably the most with Ferrar Fenton, and I don't agree with it, but it is an interesting thought nonetheless. One or several things I found interesting to note in the translation is it is the only translation that I know of In 1 Peter 3:15, he makes the connection by bolding the verse and a note at the bottom of the page that Peter is quoting Isaiah 8:13, which means Peter was speaking of Jesus Christ while quoting a verse about God in the Old Testament. This is often overlooked. Now, some may be wanting to know, do I personally use the Ferrar Fenton translation of the Bible? The answer is no, I do not. Not often. I do look at it from time to time to see how he words some verses. Sometimes I find that it's a little harder to understand, and sometimes I find that it's a little easier to understand in how he translated it. It's not my favorite translation. I do use it from time to time, like I said, along with many other translations, just to see how a verse is translated. Do I recommend you to have a copy in your library? Of course, along with many other translations. But I do not recommend it as a primary Bible translation. For those interested in a copy of it, I'll put some links below where you can read it for free, or where you can order a hard copy. I do not believe Ferrar Fenton had ill intentions in his translation of the Bible. In fact, I think he had good intentions. And many Christians cannot say that they have studied the Bible for 50 years and translated the Hebrew and the Greek from the original language into English. That is a very big accomplishment. So for those interested in it, I'll put the links below, and thank you for listening to this little bit of Bible translation history.